Welcome to my channel. Tyler Bond detested airports. To him, they were an unavoidable nuisance in his work. Although they disrupted his marriage, he loathed them. They were always congested with groups waiting to be hurled through the sky to their destinations like herds of cattle, and indeed, they were treated as such. Perhaps he ought to reconsider his viewpoint and simply accept things as they stand, especially since he was handsomely compensated to tolerate it. A decade earlier, he had to queue for check-in, then for security, and subsequently for boarding the aircraft, where he would queue once more, waiting for those ahead to stow their luggage in the overhead compartments as the line inch by inch advanced towards his seat at the rear of the aircraft. Now, as a seasoned traveler, he didn't need to converse with anyone unless he chose to. His luggage no longer required checking. TSA pre-check significantly cut down wait times at security in most terminals. His frequent coast-to-coast journeys once a month, along with an additional shorter trip each month, had cemented his status with his preferred airlines, where he no longer had to sit at the back and could board right after first-class passengers. His credit card even granted him entry to the lounge, which was quite enjoyable there at Miami Airport. Although the situation had improved, he still didn't enjoy it. However, today in the lounge, Veronica, an appealing middle-aged woman who appeared slightly younger than him, dressed in a ruffled dress with a deep neckline, modestly concealed by a cardigan, was engaging him in a conversation about her latest travels. Towards the end of their chat, she allowed her cardigan to slip a bit. He was captivated. He also openly and cheerfully shared his own travel and wartime stories, and at the end of their chat, she handed him her business card. He briefly glanced at the card, reluctant to divert his gaze from Veronica, and found out she was also from Denver, which led to a few more minutes of chat. She had one more stop before heading home, which was probably for the best. After a delightful conversation, they headed to their respective gates. Was she flirting with him? Possibly, perhaps. He regretted not recognizing it during their chat. Years of marriage had numbed his flirting senses. Not that anything should or could happen. He had been utterly loyal during his 26 years of marriage and didn't plan on altering that. This was one of his cross-country trips, and despite his aversion to airports, he was cheerful because of his chat with Veronica and some success on his trip, which would result in an additional bonus next quarter. He had just sat down in his more comfortable economy plus seat to head home when his phone rang. He was about to switch it to airplane mode when it happened. It was his wife, Rebecca Sy. It was unusually early in Denver for her to be awake, let alone calling. Given the early hour, he wondered if it was important. His finger hovered over the phone to answer, but he switched it off instead. Had it been one of his children, he would have answered, of course, but whatever his wife needed could wait. He acknowledged that the travel, which started a decade ago though limited, had been challenging for them, but it shouldn't have led to so many arguments. He was rarely away for more than 6 nights a month, yet it seemed excessive. He wished his wife were more sympathetic when he had informed her about the new role years ago, along with the increased salary and bonuses. His wife practically pushed him out the door, then welcomed him back with open arms and legs for him and his earnings. Now, despite his efforts to wine and dine her more often and spend more time together, she had grown distant recently. His boss had told him that if he accepted a new role that required more travel, he could make even more money. He hadn't shared this proposal with his wife as it wouldn't have been beneficial. The whole scenario disheartened him, yet he found solace in his children, who were wonderful. He cherished his kids. His daughter Jamie had recently begun pharmacy school in the autumn, and his son Mike was taking summer classes to get ahead in his first year of engineering, following in his father's footsteps. Both parents were understandably proud and missed being present at their events and simply having them around. He suspected Rebecca felt similarly, as she had seemed downcast lately. Despite their current issues, they had nurtured 2 outstanding children who were bright, joyful, industrious, selfless, and humorous. Over the years, these children had brought them numerous additional delights. He yearned to visit them more now that they each had their own places nearby. He considered downsizing from their large house, but Rebecca was not open to this idea. Alongside her role at the hospital as a financial manager, she participated in various charity boards, and the house, neighborhood, and neighbors were fitting for her image. The minor extra maintenance of the house and garden compared to a smaller home was a compromise Tyler accepted for his wife's social prestige. The flight was as monotonous as usual, or rather, he was exhausted from the lengthy journey. Not in the mood for a movie, and having hardly slept, he decided to rest his eyes for a bit. He was awoken by the plane's landing, surprised that he had slept through almost the entire trip. Upon turning his phone back on, it seemed as though chaos had erupted. Voicemails and messages flooded in from everyone important to him. He phoned his daughter. "Oh my God, Dad, thank God you called. Jamie, you knew I was flying. What's happening? Why did everyone try to contact me but no one explained anything?" "Well, I'm not going to say anything right now. Come by my place since it's on your way home. Mike will be there too." "Jamie, you can't just leave me hanging like this. Are you and your brother all right? Is your mom okay? Has anyone been injured?" "I'm sorry, Daddy, it's just a big mess. No one's hurt, well, none of our loved ones. I'll explain everything when we see each other." What the hell? Tyler drove from Denver International Airport to his daughter's house near the university in record time. Upon his hasty arrival, he found her nearly in tears and his son sitting solemnly in a chair. "What happened, honey?" "Oh, Daddy, we're so sorry. It's a huge mess," Mike spoke up. "It's like a big bazaar." "Tell me what happened," Jamie continued. "We didn't want any of this to happen. It's just like a snowball." "What exactly didn't you want to happen?" "Well, we wanted something to happen, but not like this, honey. You haven't told me anything yet. Just tell me, okay?" "Okay, it started about a month ago when you were on your last trip to Boston. I was going to visit Mom during lunch, and as I approached, I saw a Tesla pulling into your garage, which was strange. I didn't recognize the car and didn't know who it could be. From the street, I saw that the lights were on in the house, and by the way the shadows were moving, I could tell someone was heading to the garage. I called Mom on her mobile, but she didn't answer. I waited a few more minutes and called her again. When she answered, I asked if she was home, and she said she was still at work and would talk to me later. Obviously, I suspected she was lying, so I hung up and watched the house a bit longer, wondering what to do. After some time, I moved my car out of sight and sneaked up to peek into the garage window. Mom's car was there, along with the Tesla. I was furious. I went back to my car, called Mike, and told him what I had seen. Enraged, I spent the first 6 hours waiting for him to leave, and then Mike came and watched until he left at 7 a.m. The next day, Mike followed him to work at a big office building in Cherry Creek. He approached the security guard a few minutes later and inquired if he recognized the man who had just entered. The guard provided Mike with his name, and Mike then phoned me. We were unsure of what action to take. I called Mom the following morning, upset that she hadn't responded to my call, and since then, I've been distant towards her. During your most recent trip, we monitored the situation again, and the same scenario unfolded, so Mike and I resolved to address it. Mike stepped in. I was there when you inspected the smoke detectors a few weeks back, and when I noticed the detector in the garage, an idea struck me. It seemed humorous at that moment, but not anymore. We hesitated to inform you because we knew you'd want to catch them red-handed and might even harm the intruder, possibly hurting Mom as well, either accidentally or deliberately, leading to your imprisonment. We didn't want that. We aimed to unsettle and embarrass them. I suggested to Jamie that we slip into the garage around midnight and generate one of those spontaneous sparks that occasionally occur with electric vehicles, hoping to create enough smoke to trigger the alarm. Since the smoke detectors were operational, I believe nothing would transpire except the arrival of the fire department. I guess that means you weren't aware there was a heat detector in the garage, not a smoke detector, Tyler stated. Mike looked shocked. Oh crap, that's why the alarm was delayed. Jamie interjected. He thought calling the fire department would be humiliating, but that wasn't sufficient, so I also somewhat intervened. Tyler appeared stunned as he began to comprehend the various repercussions of his children's actions. He asked, "It looks like my marriage has ignited. Is our house still standing?" Jamie responded, "What? Oh yes, well, mostly. Oh God, I visited the house after Mom left for work both times, and each time, one of Mom's Magnum wine bottles was in the trash. I know she prefers to keep her bottle chilled. So it seemed like the perfect opportunity to heighten their disgrace. These days, it's quite simple to purchase Viagra or its equivalent online, so I ordered some. As a pharmacy student with a chemistry degree, it wasn't difficult to convert the pills into a liquid." Tyler interrupted, "You didn't do that." "I'm afraid I did. Yesterday afternoon, I sneaked into the house, checked the wine fridge, and noticed Mom had already opened her Magnum bottle, resealed it, and returned it. Only a glass or two had been taken, so I added my concoction, stirred it, and placed it back without leaving any evidence. We thought they would need to leave the house abruptly when the fire service arrived, and he wouldn't be able to conceal his reaction, which would expose both her and her lover in front of all the neighbors. It was Mike's turn to speak. Just before midnight, I entered through the garage window that I had unlocked earlier. It took some effort, but by using the car's charging port and some tools, I managed to create an arc that heated the metal in that vicinity. I'm not sure if his car was defective or what, but suddenly there was a burst of sparks. I assumed it would activate the smoke alarm, or at least I hoped so, and I hurried out of there. Apparently after I left, the battery ignited. I believe that's what happened because before the firefighters could arrive, not only his car, but also Mom's car was engulfed in flames. By then, the alarm had resonated throughout the house and the entire neighborhood could hear it. Jamie added, "You know how Mom reacts when she's distressed? It's like her mind just shuts down." That's where the story becomes even more intriguing than my wife being unfaithful and our house catching fire. Jamie continued. "We explained to you that the house hadn't burned down." "Oh, great anyway. During the brief conversation I had with Mom this morning, she mentioned that she leaped out of bed when the alarm went off. She tried to awaken her companion, Eric, but he remained unresponsive. She knew he had consumed a lot of alcohol and was unable to rouse him. Believing he might be deceased, she panicked. She dialed 911 from the house phone and began shouting, 'Fire! Call an ambulance.' Then, she grabbed him by the ankles and started pulling him from the bedroom to the exit, not considering the fact that they were both completely unclothed. He was too cumbersome for her to carry down the stairs, so she continued to drag him. Absent-mindedly, he lay face down. Remember the nail at the entrance to your bedroom that was protruding enough to snag one of my socks a few months ago when I visited? Well, it appears you either didn't hammer it down, or it has popped back up, because guess what? While Mom dragged Eric, who was quite heavy, the nail either protruded further, or he was just heavy enough to make it catch him. Here's where all that Viagra he consumed with the wine plays a part. Not only did the carpet nail slice his groin, but because he was erect, the nail also sliced him there, as well as all along his stomach and face. Since the house was fairly dark and he was unconscious, Mom didn't realize this and continued dragging him downstairs, thump, thump, thump down the steps. I almost feel sorry for the guy. In addition to his 3-foot gash, which was bleeding heavily from his groin, he suffered carpet burns from his groin to his nose, which probably split open when he toppled off the bottom step onto the tile floor in the kitchen bam. Being dragged across the tiles to the front door certainly wasn't pleasant either, especially when his head bounced over the threshold, hit the concrete porch, and rolled down the steps to the sidewalk, thump, thump, bam. It seems he sustained road rash and a severe facial injury. Tyler didn't feel too remorseful about it. Mike continued the tale. The home alarm likely woke the other neighbors because there were quite a few onlookers when Mom dragged her lover, both stark naked, out the front door in full view of everyone. Timothy from across the street even recorded the ordeal on his phone and sent it to me. "Here, take a look." Tyler was astonished by what he saw on Mike's phone, a video of Rebecca, naked, backing out of the front of the house, and sure enough, Eric's head was bouncing off the concrete as he was dragged down the steps by Rebecca. Either her adrenaline was sky high or she was stronger than he had thought. Right after that, the ambulance and fire department arrived. He watched as the crews rushed into the house to open the garage door and began dousing everything in and around the garage with water. The paramedics approached his naked wife with an emergency blanket to cover her and then turned Eric over, his bleeding organ was still erect and swinging for all to see. Tyler could say that he came out ahead in comparison with her lover. Mike informed him that apparently Eric's electric car had a device that sent an alert to his home phone whenever something unusual happened with the vehicle. Eric's wife, Francine, received the alert, and realizing that her husband's car was at someone's house and not at the airport where it should have been, hurried over to investigate. Continuing to watch, Tyler saw that they couldn't rouse Eric to consciousness. He was alive but unresponsive. They brought a stretcher from the ambulance, but before they could secure him, Francine appeared and flipped it over, causing Eric to fall face first onto the sidewalk. He would need more than a few stitches for this fresh wound on his head. Should he feel sorry for him? Tyler couldn't recall ever seeing anyone so furious. Francine landed several solid hits to Eric's groin before they could restrain her. She was still kicking when they placed him back on the stretcher, his organs still bleeding and now appearing crooked, which hadn't been the case a few minutes earlier. Tyler wondered if Eric had awakened when they attempted to straighten it. He hoped so. Rebecca stood in shock as at least a dozen or so well-informed neighbors watched the unfolding tragicomedy. Francine lunged at Rebecca, but instead of striking her, she yanked off the blanket, leaving Rebecca exposed once more on their front lawn. Tyler thought to himself, "Damn, I'm going to miss those breasts," although the neighbors certainly didn't miss seeing them or her neatly groomed bikini area. It was clear that her personal grooming habits were no longer a private affair, unfortunately. When the police arrived, the fire was mostly under control, except for Eric's car, which continued to emit sparks and smoke. Francine, practically foaming at the mouth, demanded the police arrest Rebecca. On what charge, nobody knew, but an officer led Rebecca, clearly shaken, to the back seat of the patrol car, simply to separate her from Francine and the gathering crowd. Jamie explained, "We knew Eric was married to Francine, but we didn't realize she was the district attorney's daughter. It seems she had enough influence to have Mom taken to the station and placed in an interrogation room for the rest of the night. Dressed only in that blanket. They released her around 6 a.m. When she tried to call you, you didn't answer." Tyler considered how, due to Eric not waking up immediately, they performed a toxicology report on him, which turned up unusual levels of Viagra. When his wife learned this, she became furious, because he has a heart condition and supposedly would never take such a substance, at least that's what she claimed. The medic remarked that it was fortunate the fire occurred, as it meant Eric was rushed to the hospital quickly enough to prevent him from slipping into a coma, which could have been disastrous. Tyler asked, "Even worse?" Mike interjected, "The police took Mom back to the interrogation room, and this morning officers came to the house to try to collect evidence. But the firefighters had knocked over the wine bottle and glasses during the firefight, breaking them. With all the water, the destruction of the bottles and any remaining wine meant there was no uncontaminated evidence left. I was there earlier, and the only thing the police noted was a bloody trail leading down the steps and out the door. I suspect they're grilling Mom in the interrogation room right now. Everyone assumes Eric took the Viagra, although he wasn't supposed to, and without any evidence, I'd be surprised if they hold Mom much longer. They managed to extract the Tesla from the garage that morning. Mom and Francine were all over the news. It wasn't very pleasant," Tyler remarked. "Where is your mother now?" Jamie replied, "She's still at the police station. They said they'd call us when we can come and get her." "I'm so sorry, Dad. We should have just told you instead of trying to get back at her. We were so angry and only made a bad situation worse," while his kids looked anxious. A smile slowly spread across Tyler's face. He stood up and said, "I appreciate what you guys tried to do, really. It means a lot to me. Honestly, I don't think you made things worse. Given all the circumstances, it turned out pretty well. I'm going home now. Your mother will need you both. I'll let you decide who will pick her up. It won't be me." They understood. On the way home, Tyler stopped by the bank and transferred half of their accounts into a new account solely in his name. He planned to manage the rest of the finances later that evening or the next day. He also stopped at the local market and picked up some garbage bags to take his clothes to the dry cleaners, as he suspected everything in the house now smelled of smoke. Approaching the house, he paid little attention to the fire damage instead. The bloody trail across the porch and down the steps was clearly visible. He chuckled as he entered the front door, which was closed but not locked. The bloody trail continued up the steps. Ignoring the blood, he went to the bedroom and packed all his clothes into bags to take to the dry cleaner. His insurance company would handle the bill. He noticed the bed was unmade, and the sight momentarily saddened him, but the feeling was fleeting. He knew his next steps divorcing that woman was the clear starting point. He planned to separate their finances, find an apartment, travel more, and use his newfound free time to spend more time with the kids and enjoy life more fully. He wondered if Mike could send him the video so he could share it with the local news stations. Rebecca's volunteer organizations would surely be thrilled that one of their board members could boost their visibility so significantly. As he loaded the last bag into his car, a police car pulled up. The officers asked him for some identification, inquiring about the day's events, possibly having been there earlier or having seen the video. One of the officers looked embarrassed but still asked, "Are you going to be okay?" All the day's events replayed in Tyler's mind like those old-fashioned wheels spun on game shows. When the mental wheel stopped at Veronica's business card, a broad smile spread across Tyler's face. "I'm going to be just fine, officer, rest assured. I'm going to be just fine. Thank you for listening until the end. See you in the next episode of Cheating Stories. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. Goodbye."